£7 is the kind of standard price of a pint now.
But that's
Yeah, in
extraordinarily
my day,
high.
when I last bought a pint, it was about £3.50.
We're making the kind of after-work pint, a celebratory visit to the pub, prohibitive for so many people.
And I'd never worked in a pub, never pulled a pint of beer and opened the pub. And that was 21 years ago. People thought I was mad. People thought I'd go bust immediately. But I didn't. So when you pay $6.50 for a pint, 20% of that goes straight back to the government. We need more recognition, more help and more support, rather than feeling we're a bit of a nuisance.
Welcome to the first episode of How I'd Fix with me, Ed Vaizey.
And me, Becca Hutson. This is our practical political podcast where we venture outside of Westminster to tackle the real issues facing real people and hopefully come up with some new ways to fix Britain.
We're teaming up from different sides of the political aisle, but we can't do this by ourselves, so we've invited in for each episode a fixer to tell us how to fix a particular problem.
All you have to do is listen, subscribe and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. But we do want to hear from you too. You can get in touch with your own comments and ideas on how to fix Britain by emailing us howidfixpodcast@news.co.uk.
And because it's our first show, we're kicking off with something which is important to nearly everyone in this country. Something that's built into the very fabric of British culture. I'm talking, of course, about the price of a pint of beer.
Now, we'll be meeting our fabulous guest in a few moments' time. But Ed, you spent time at the very highest level of government. So tell me, how often does this actually come up?
Well, in my experience, it never came up because I was in the culture department dealing with the high arts rather than the price of beer. But obviously, everything in the Treasury revolved around getting great headlines for the budget. And beer was one, spirits and alcohol, that's what people focus on when they talk about the budget and what it means, and also obviously fuel duty. And I think one of the things I'd like to explore with our fixer is why is it that the fuel duty campaigners have won, because it's been frozen for years and years and years, but the alcohol campaigners have not won, because duty on alcohol has constantly gone up.
But the kind of the pub test and who you'd have a beer with and would you go down the pub with a politician is something that is used a lot, especially kind of in election campaigns and to try and create that relatability. So it's quite surprising that then kind of making that something that exists and it sounds like it should be more important.
You know, it probably is very important. I mean, I'm being slightly facetious, but you're right. I mean, if you think about it, it's the price of fags, although fags are becoming less popular and are indeed about to be banned, the price of booze, the price of fuel, and obviously income tax, headline income tax rates. Those are the biggest and easiest ways to cut through with a budget. And I think as well, pubs, they never kind of, they would lobby on things like alcohol duty. The big pub owners would lobby on things like that. But they never really lobbied to say, we're actually part of the fabric of Britain. We're a cultural asset, if you like. And you should be thinking about policies that help pubs to survive.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think kind of some of our greatest sort of soft exports to the world have been the culture that's come out of our nightclubs and our pubs. You've got the Cavern Club, the Hacienda, Fabric, the Hawley Arms. These are huge music venues in the UK that have given the world some of the greatest artists and music in the world. And it's all part of extending kind of Cool Britannia and all that soft power. And I think if we don't have support for those spaces, we'll lose that, and that would be a huge tragedy, wouldn't it?
I mean, I agree with you. And showing my age, I would cite the Marquee Club and the 100 Club and places like that. But it is also interesting. The biggest boost to pubs exports came when David Cameron took the president of China to his local pub near the Prime Minister's residence in Chequers, which is in Buckinghamshire, and I stayed with David Cameron after that, and we went to the pub and we met the pub landlord, and he said that ever since the president of China had come to his pub, he would have coach loads of China, because I said to him, there are a lot of Chinese people in your pub today. He said, well, what happens is we're equidistant from London and Bicester Village, which is a big factory outlet in Oxfordshire, and what happens is coach loads of Chinese tourists get on the coach in London. They drive to my pub, they all get out, they all have their photo taken, they all get back in the coach and they drive off to Bicester Village. And apparently somebody had paid him a lot of money. I may be wrong about this, so we may have to check, but somebody had paid him a lot of money to license his pub so they could build replicas in China.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, so they are the background.
So it is a cultural export.
It is, and the background to some of our most key diplomatic moments,
Absolutely.
It seems.
And I can't remember what beer the president of China was given, but obviously the sales of that went through the roof. I think David Cameron wanted to give him a beer made by an independent brewer, but then they noticed the title of the beer was Revolution.
Eek.
So they thought
Uncomfortable.
that could be a bit, all sorts of connotations going on there. So I think he had a mainstream beer, and I think that beer company might have done very well in China after that.
What's the most expensive pint that you've bought?
Well, I don't buy pints. That's the trouble. I'm totally wrong for this podcast already.
Excellent.
I buy very expensive large glasses of wine, which do cost an absolute fortune.
But maybe you've bought someone a pint then, not for yourself.
No, I never buy anyone a drink.
Excellent. I bought a pint for £7 in Bethnal Green, which I think is a lot of money. Not for me, for someone else.
But £7 is the kind of standard price of a pint now.
But that's extraordinarily
Yeah, in my day,
high.
when I last bought a pint, it was about £3.50.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, there we go.
Just checking for the receipt through the cobwebs of my wallet.
I imagine you claimed for it, didn't you?
Of course.
We're making the kind of after-work pint, a celebratory visit to the pub, prohibitive for so many people.
Yeah, I think going and buying a drink in the pub is now killing. But the other thing is, even buying a soft drink in a pub can be extremely expensive, because obviously pub landlords have to make their money. Fewer people obviously drink alcohol when they go to the pub, because a lot, particularly country pubs, which are the kind of pubs that I looked after when I was an MP. People will be driving there to drink, and they can't obviously then have alcohol because they're going to get nicked if they drive back. So they buy, pints of lime and soda, but they cost you £4 or £5 sometimes when you go to those sort of places. So it is an expensive night out. I don't know really how people survive.
Yeah, well, they're not going out, are they? And that's what's so sad. So, like you were saying about the kind of nightlife, we're seeing, all those sort of, increased residential areas, meaning that there are all those noise complaints. Venues are struggling to keep the doors open. People just don't have the cash to go and spend money on a night out anymore. And so everyone's going home and watching Netflix, maybe listening to this podcast though, which would sort of, there'd be a
well, yeah, exactly.
secondary benefit to
I
us.
think the way that pubs have to survive, and we will hear more from our fixers, obviously you have to diversify to a certain extent. So obviously a lot more pubs serve food, and obviously quite a lot of pubs have become sort of gastro pubs, so they're almost like restaurants in their own right. Then of course there's sport. Live sport is the thing that's still going to survive whatever happens with YouTube, etc., etc. But people will go to the pub to watch a game. So if you put on live football, you can probably attract quite a few punters who are going to have a few pints while they watch the game.
Do you go to the pub and watch sport?
I do.
What sport would you watch? Just curious.
I watch Brentford play with my brother.
Play football, was that?
Yeah.
All right. I'm curious.
So it's not up to you and me to fix the cost of a pint of beer. So the responsibility lies with our guest to at least come up with some ideas about how to fix the price of a beer. So I'm delighted to welcome the legendary landlady of the George Tavern in East London, Pauline Forster. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome.
You sound a bit shocked to be here, Pauline.
Yeah, and it's Forster, not Foster.
I knew it. I knew the minute you looked at me like that, I'd mispronounced your surname. Okay, Pauline Forster, tell us how you became a pub landlady.
Well, purely by accident, actually. I came from Gloucestershire, from a farmhouse in the Cotswolds. And
you were very on trend.
Yeah, at the age of 53, as an artist, I decided to kind of move to London because I was doing lots of art projects there.
Can we stop just there? At the age of 53,
yeah,
you left your farm in Gloucestershire
to
come to London.
After raising 5 kids there.
That's a late career change.
Yeah, well, I was always doing the art thing, but I started kind of doing more work and exhibitions up in London. So I sold up, ended up buying this closed down pub, the George Tavern. I fell in love with the building. It's a beautiful building, a listed building. And it was being sold for development flats, knocking down. I bought it in auction, and after 2 weeks of being in the pub, I decided, my God, this is so beautiful, and it's all there. The bar was there. Even the optics were full, and the tables and the chairs. And I got rid of the sticky carpet and some of the, the curtains, and got the licence back, went on a little course, and I'd never worked in a pub, never pulled a pint of beer, and opened the pub. And that was 21 years ago. And started doing live music and art performance, theatre, a bit of everything. And it became, people thought I was mad. People thought I'd go bust immediately. But I didn't. And I fought many battles with developers who wanted to build too close. I won a landmark case a few years ago, stopping a development, well, not stopping the development, but got a clause within the lease saying nobody could ever complain about the noise from the George Tavern. because we're live music. We do live music every night of the week, or some kind of performance. And we stay up until 3:30 at the weekends, Friday and Saturday, 2:30 on a Thursday, midnight the rest of the week. So we work hard, we're full on pub and provide live music and culture to London and beyond.
I can't think of anyone better qualified to help us fix this problem.
I think we're going to solve it on this podcast.
Yeah, thank heaven.
The thing that has eluded people for years, we're now going to solve.
Yeah. So you're going to be the leader of the UK for the duration of this podcast. So what kind of leader might you be, do you think?
I might now just be myself and just fight every battle that comes my way. I never give in. I'm hardworking, and I think that's part of my success. I can do any kind of job. I don't mind picking them up. I don't mind doing anything. I'll fill all the gaps, and I always come up with good ideas. So.
I think you sound eminently qualified.
Yeah.
Would you turn Downing Street into a pub?
Well, it could have a bar. I'm sure I could make a success of it if I had a chance.
It'd be quite fun if you were Prime Minister, because basically there'd be live music every night in Downing Street.
Well, it would be, it would be creative. We all inclusive. We, right across the board. So, and music actually makes the UK what it is worldwide. You go anywhere and Amy Winehouse, all those big names, they start off in little pubs like mine. And so we are the birthing ground for all those major names that you go to, the big arenas and festivals and people know throughout the world. Wherever you go in an airport, you hear music from the UK that started in a grassroots music venue. So we're really important.
Yeah, you really, really are. We were talking about that at the top of the show, that actually kind of from pubs and from kind of British nightlife, some of the most brilliant acts and artists and music has been given to the world. Do you feel like that is recognised by the government? Do you feel like
No, I don't think it is at all. We've had Phoebe Waller-Bridge started in my pub.
Oh my gosh.
When she left RADA, she came and she did regular shows. She started writing Dry Write with her friend Vicky Jones, and now look at her. We've just had Last Dinner Party. They started first gig at the George on the stage. So we do nurture those young artists and performers and writers who then go on to, produce wonderful stuff.
Yeah, and become brilliant ambassadors for our country.
Yeah.
Before we get into your policies on how you fix the £8 pint, what is the cost of a pint in your pub?
£6 to £6.50.
Gosh, I mean, that sounds like a lot, but I think that's now kind of below average, I think.
Well,
wait, hold on, Becca. You were complaining about a £7 pint just now.
Yeah.
Now you're just being nice to our
50,
guests.
but
you should tell her it's daylight robbery.
The extra 50 pence I could use on a packet of crisps, maybe.
Yeah,
or
but
to put in the slot machine.
We don't do slot.
Pauline has a jukebox.
Jukebox.
No jukebox. It's all live.
Oh, live music. It might be an offensive tip.
Anyway, back to your total concession to Pauline that £6.50 pint is affordable.
I'm quite swept along by Pauline. So
can I just explain a little bit as well? Because ours is six. Being a grassroots music venue, we have extra costs coming out of our pints. We've got security, we've got sound engineers, we've got equipment, we've got event bookers, who manage all the bands that come in. So there's a lot of extra staff, a lot of security on the door, all coming out of 1 pint of beer. Tax is ridiculous. VAT is tough. So when you pay $6.50 for a pint, 20% of that goes straight back to the government. So we provide a lot of income for the government, and we like you say, we need more recognition, more help, and more support, rather than feeling we're a bit of a nuisance sometimes.
But alcohol duty raises 12 billion quid a year, so that's quite useful for the government, isn't it? Absolutely, because it's taxed before it even comes, into those barrels. And then we've got the cost of electricity. My electricity bill went up by 300%. We're now paying £40,000 a year for electricity. That is due to the fact that we have to keep a cellar cold with cellar coolers, great big machines producing ice that all the beer comes up through, so that when you pull that pint and you get that cold beer,
There's a whole cellar like the Titanic whirring away, making ice, making everything cold for that pint. And then you have to have the heaters on upstairs in the winter to keep people warm to drink their cold pint. So think about it.
So you could reduce the cost of a pint if you only served bitter and gave your punters blankets.
Yeah, exactly. We
And
could.
no music.
And we're pretty tight on the heat upstairs. We're a listed building, and the drafts coming through. We don't have double glazing and stuff like that. We've got old windows.
Yeah, well, that's something to think about, isn't it? Free blankets on entry.
Well, I was thinking perhaps we should have some support to help get our buildings with heat pumps coming in from outside, so that we're
Yes,
more
I like
carbon
that.
friendly.
Out of nowhere, a policy has emerged which is subsidised heat pumps for commercial
buildings.
venues.
Yeah, definitely.
Like pubs, music clubs. That's a good policy. That would be, as a politician, I can tell you, that would be an attractive policy.
I would love it if that happened, because it breaks my heart to be spending for that much money on electricity. That is actually, we need to think about the planet.
God, thank God you're in number 10, Paul.
Yeah.
So your first policy is simply to reduce the taxation on beer, right? Which would be the easiest way of bringing down the cost of a pint. So
yeah, it would be.
I'm curious, why don't they just reduce the levy?
Well, because it's 12 billion quid and it's going up to 16 billion quid by 2028. The point about the thing about alcohol duty, from a politician's perspective, it's twofold. First of all, it's a straightforward money-raising exercise. 35 million pints sold in the first week of December. So you've got a lot of punters going out to drink. They're paying tax. They're not really thinking. Funny enough, kind of going back to Becca's complaint about a £7 pint, you're probably thinking in the pub, I can't believe beer's so expensive. But you're not thinking, and I hate the government. So you're paying the tax without realising it. The government's raising a lot of money. And then secondly, when you're challenged on it and people say you're paying your tax on alcohol is too high, the government goes all prim and proper and says, well, alcohol is dangerous and it's important for health reasons that alcohol is not cheap, that people have to think about buying alcohol.
But we could say the same about cars not being very good for health, could you? But we managed to protect fuel duty.
Well, this is what is so interesting about which policies resonate with the public and which don't. Weirdly, though, it's a hard argument to say after their hard day at work, the working man or woman is entitled to go to the pub and sink 18 pints. So could you please reduce alcohol duty?
I don't think anyone can pretend, though, that increasing alcohol levy is some kind of public health initiative, is it? It's a way of lining your pockets. And to your point, maybe people aren't drinking their pint and thinking, I hate the government. But if someone made it cheaper to have that pint, I think that would really cut through and resonate, wouldn't it? If Sunak or Starmer said, we're going to make your pint a bit cheaper, I mean, it would also sort of shore up support from the hospitality industry.
Yeah, it would. And I think when people come and buy a pint for £6.50 or £6 or £7 or whatever people charge, they actually look at the owner of the pub or the landlord and landlady and think they're just getting richer, and it's actually we're not. We've got more and more coming out of that pint, and it's a struggle, a real struggle for the energy that you put in and the passion that you put in to keep that door open. And it is really important part of our heritage, having those pubs and the buildings. They're purpose-built buildings that, really should be listed, all of them, in my opinion, to keep those fronts, to keep that when you walk in that door and people more and more come into the George and are just absolutely blown away by the fact that it's still really old inside and you can feel the history.
Yeah.
And we need to protect that. We get people from all over the world now coming just to take pictures in the George because we've had so many celebrities in there.
That leads nicely actually to your second policy, which is about help for businesses, reducing the rate of VAT on grassroots music venues, on pubs, on those kinds of buildings. I mean, again, why not? Again, it would shore up support from a hugely important sector. Everyone loves having local music venues. Pubs are a massive part of our high street, of our villages, of our towns. I don't quite understand why it feels like a really obvious vote winner.
Well, it's business rates as well that are
business rates
killing.
Yeah, business rates and the VAT. I mean, I've got the VAT due at the end of this month, and it's always like, oh God.
So what's the VAT levied on?
Well, everything we sell in the bar, everything, crisps, everything, every drink. Yeah, everything.
So there's stats that come from UK Hospitality, which is obviously one of the trade body that represents pubs and restaurants and bars. They say that we're losing kind of 23,000 businesses a year having to close because they can't keep the doors open. And
I
so
know,
the
it's
consequences
so
that has on for employment, local communities, boarded up venues, that all kind of contributes to this feeling that everything's a bit broken, doesn't it?
Well, I thought of a 2-for-1 because did you know that a campaign launched recently to reduce VAT on bras?
Yes.
And so with just changing one letter, you could have reduced VAT on bars.
Yeah, you could use the campaign material.
Yeah, you could probably use the same campaign material.
Okay.
Bars and bras. What a campaign. If I was a
would argue
politician, I'd grab that with both hands.
It's
The government needs a very coherent policy to protect what are very important community assets. And alongside that comes obviously the whole range of taxes that are levied on you, from business rates to alcohol duty to VAT and so on.
Also, we're an open door. It's unlike any other business on the high street. Anybody can walk in as long as they're well behaved and they're not going to cause trouble. They can come and sit in a pub. If they're lonely, we're suffering from mental health crisis in this country as well, not just in this country, seems worldwide. But a pub, really helps. If you're feeling lonely, depressed, or whatever, you can come to a pub. You can sit there at a table. You're not asked to leave like in a restaurant or a cab. If you're sat there for 3 hours waiting to, you haven't talked to anybody, seen it. It's really important for old people, for young people. Also, another thing, while you were talking, we're also a public toilet for my area. There isn't one at all. So everybody... it's all right if I use the toilet. We never refuse.
Oh, no, that's
people.
very interesting. I think this is actually quite an important issue. What is the etiquette of using a pub loo? Because sometimes I get very worked up about it. I get very nervous.
Oh.
So I always have to go to the loo.
Okay.
It's just one of my things.
Uh-huh.
Well, I think everybody.
And when I go into a pub to use the loo, I get myself tied up in knots. So I sort of pretend. I sort of go, Becca, Becca, waving at my imaginary friend, pretending that I'm using the pub so I can sneak in and go to the... I feel really guilty.
Gosh, quite the rude.
No, but I think it depends on the policy of the pub. I mean, my policy is because there isn't anywhere in that part of Tower Hamlets. There's a market as well up the road, no toilet. There's people, tradespeople, and, when there's building developments on our doorstep, they all come into the George. They always say, is it all right? And we always say, yeah, it's okay. They don't have to buy a pint. They don't have to feel guilty. We do allow people to go to the loo. But again, I would like a bit of recognition from the council.
Yeah.
When they're giving us a hard time about this or that, feeling like they really want to take our licence away. Because I don't know why I feel that, but I do. We need more love from the authorities and from the government, and more support and more understanding about what we're actually achieving.
Pauline, how often do you throw someone out of your pub?
We only throw people out who are wrong and who are behaving badly.
Once a week?
No, not once a week. We've got some good security people who, they have to check in bags and make sure they're not bringing anything in, like their own alcohol or anything that's dangerous.
Do people bring their own alcohol to pubs?
Oh, they do, yes.
Really?
Try to sneak it in all the time.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Don't start doing that. No.
Yeah, well, it happens. People, I suppose, are, desperate to come out and they haven't got any money, so they think they can sneak a bottle of vodka in their bag.
Have you faced sort of the reality of closure or having a license? Has it ever become?
I'm pretty good at kind of diversifying. So from day one at the George, pretty much straight away, I started thinking this was a good location for different things. So we started doing filming in there. So I've had loads of major film. I've got Gandhi being filmed next week in the pub upstairs.
I thought they'd already done Gandhi.
But there's another one now. Young Gandhi.
There's always time for. There's always
Gandhi
room
the
for a
sequel.
remake. Yeah, sequel. We've had loads of music videos filmed there. Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, Justin
How
Timberlake.
Did you know that?
I did my research.
Oh,
Nick Cave did 3 music videos.
oh wow.
Serious stuff.
Duran spent a weekend jamming and filming there.
Gosh.
We've had...
The Beatles?
No, we haven't had the Beatles. The Rolling Stones did a cover.
Probably
at the
arguably
start.
better.
We've
bit
had,
cooler.
We had number one Clean Bandit had #1 for 6 weeks over Christmas, and
Yes.
it was all filmed at the George.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
But what a true kind of epicenter of culture and of
It
London
is,
culture
in
as well.
Stepney.
Yeah.
Yeah, and last year we're the only pub left in Stepney. We've got another one open just a few months ago, but for a long time we were the last pub. They all have closed
Really?
around me, yeah.
It is amazing because I think it's 21,000 hospitality venues close every year, 23,000, 21 businesses a day in the hospitality industry going under. And I think one of the policies that I really, again, sang to me because it, it's kind of, it sounds so innovative and interesting that you came up with was this idea of a national trust.
Yeah,
for pubs.
exactly.
I love that.
These buildings are like stately homes in a way, miniature stately homes. They've got all the culture, just all the features. And if we could have a national trust for public house building to save them from being spoiled and then put in a trust for forever then basically. And so there's like guardians kind of in them, being the landlords and keeping those doors open.
I absolutely love that idea.
Yeah.
I thought that really was kind of really sort of spoke to the heart of what this problem is, because these are so much more than just venues to drink in. They are huge parts of our culture
it's
and our heritage.
and we don't want to lose them because we've lost so many. They're either turned into either flats. Most of them are going flats because there's money in flats. A long time ago in my area, because of the population change, they became kebab houses with pretty destructive kind of things, or corner like offices or something, and just destroy that whole beautiful facade of what we're used to in this country of the pub.
I feel like the Conservatives at the moment don't love the National Trust, though. They're always
they hate
going
the
to
National
war
Trust.
with the National
Yeah.
Trust.
Why is that, do you think?
Because they're morons. Because they have this culture war obsession.
But they all like living in these nice, stately
So
Yes,
true.
they think the National
but not
Trust,
in my backyard type of thing.
They
Yeah,
think
exactly.
the National Trust is run by a bunch of lefties. That's the
Okay.
problem.
Just because they want, they want to fly a flag for pride, or try and acknowledge some of our past. But I think the idea of that encompassing kind of buildings like yours, I think is absolutely brilliant. Like, what would be an argument for not doing that? I'm trying to think. There's always a con, and you always manage to sum it up.
The other reason that the National Trust idea interests me is because, to a certain extent, it's a sort of self-help idea. So a lot of the brewers run pubs, Green King or whatever. They all run pubs, and they run them for profit. And obviously, I don't want to libel anyone, but the bottom line is the most important thing to them. And to a certain extent, they arguably, I may be proved wrong about this, they take the character out of them. So the idea of a kind of not-for-profit pub, if I can put it that way, would be interesting. Where the pub almost had charitable status, because it was part of a national trust for pubs, would be quite interesting. Who knows what that would do to your VAT? So because obviously charities can offset a lot of what they do. They get a lot of tax relief for charities.
Yeah, they
so
do.
that would be an interesting thing if people like you were prepared to say, give up their pub, as it were, or sell their pub to this charity.
Well, they'd have to do both because we can't save one and put one out of business. I own the George, so mine's not on a lease. It's as far as I'm concerned, it'll go on forever. I've got 5 sons, or that we'll put something in place to keep that. I feel very passionate.
Do your
about
sons help out in the pub?
They have done. One of them is living there at the moment. They've all started when I moved from the countryside. They all came with me, and they've all done their time in the pub, and they're still involved.
So
but they're designers of furniture and stuff like that.
Can I just ask your view on the chain? So I read a big interview in the Times the other day with Tim Weatherspoon.
Okay.
Tim
Martin from Weatherspoons. And it was fascinating because the guy, they got this journalist called Harry Wallop who writes a lot for the Times, and he kind of spent 24 hours in Weatherspoons, and he was fairly complimentary on a number of things. He said, they've got bedrooms which are, completely utilitarian, but they work, they're clean. And, the price of a pint is tiny compared to what most people pay. And you get, standard pub food and so on. And he kind of, in a sense, everything we've talked about a pub being, fair play, you could say. Weatherspoons are providing that at very low cost.
Yeah, well, I look at that, and people say that, about comparison. And I say, it's like saying putting Sainsbury's and the corner shop and expecting them to be the same. We're not. Sainsbury's, like Weatherspoons, they're wholesale. They're wholesalers because they've got so many, and we're just one. So we are the corner shop, the village shop, compared to Tesco's, Sainsbury's.
Okay, let's rate your policies, Pauline. So let's start with alcohol duty. Now, I'm slightly conflicted on this because alcohol duty does raise a lot in taxes. There is a case for saying that alcohol should be a bit more expensive than a pint of milk. So I'm going to put a little left field.
Okay, I'm going sensibly centrist. I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, well,
get it in the manifesto.
You don't love tax. You love taxing. You're meant to be in favour of alcohol taxes. Help for businesses.
I'm in favour of Pauline.
Help for businesses. Reducing business rates for pubs. Again, I would go sensibly centrist on that. I do think overall the amount of taxes we levy on businesses are too high.
Yeah, and the consequences of you not being able to keep
especially
your
as
doors
small
open.
businesses, independent businesses.
Yeah.
It's much more difficult.
Yeah, thousands of businesses having to shut their doors because they can't afford to keep going, I think is appalling. So I'm sensibly centrist.
I mean, as well as all the alcohol tax, it's like the people who work behind the bar. We do the London living wage, by the way. And, they're all paying a lot out of their pay packet on payroll. It's kind of like, I feel for them because they've got all the high rents and they want to go out as well.
And National Trust for Pubs, I'm calling radical, which is a compliment.
Good.
Because it really caught my attention. I think it's a really interesting debate, and it's a way of joining up all those different policies about saving the high street, community assets, listing, heritage, planning laws.
Yeah, I'm going full nuclear. I think that was absolutely brilliant. I think the idea of kind of clubbing being extinct by 2030, which I think is what will happen if we carry on closing pubs and venues.
It will.
I think it would be a great loss to us and to the world at large. So I press ahead with that one, please. Absolutely brilliant.
Pauline Forster, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, pleasure. Good to meet you both.
Get yourself back to your pub.
Yeah, I do.
How do you think that went?
I thought Pauline was fascinating. I loved how passionately she spoke about her industry and the importance of pubs. And I thought she made such an important point about how pubs are so much more than just somewhere to go and drink. They are, for lots of people, a bit of a lifeline. And at a time when lots of people are lonely, lots of people are struggling with their mental health, lots of communities feel very marginalised, actually the importance of having a place to go, a pub to sit in, a warm venue where there are lots of people around, I think really can't be kind of underestimated in its importance.
She was very interesting. I mean, I guess a couple of thoughts kind of emerged at the end for me. One is obviously every business wants kind of special treatment. So if this was the corner shop or any other business, independent business, they would be talking about the huge costs imposed on them. But at the same time, I do think there is something special about pubs. And also, obviously, there are no pub landlords or landladies in the House of Commons, as far as I'm aware. And I don't think politicians ever think through, it's a bit of an obsession of mine, joining up the policies. So, you raise VAT here, you raise alcohol duty there, you raise business rates here. And suddenly it all adds up for the poor person who's at the coalface, having to run a business and pay you your taxes. So I think we should think through all of that kind of thing. And I really loved this idea of a national trust for pubs, only if it was some kind of, charity that could start taking some pubs into, inverted commas, public ownership. I think it would be a fascinating idea.
Nationalising? Is that nationalising pubs? Is
yeah,
that what
so
you're
the
calling
weird
for?
thing is you're meant to be the lefty and you're all in favour of lowering taxes.
I know.
And I'm the righty who's all in favour of nationalising the pubs.
But I think we're both uniquely aligned, which never really happens, on the importance of this, and that we are in danger of losing our entire
Yeah, but the trouble is,
nightlife.
Becca, this podcast is only going to work if you and I have a massive row.
But we've done plenty of that
Okay.
when the mics aren't rolling. You're right, I guess, but I think you're speaking to a bigger problem that oftentimes government just don't think through the consequences of what they're doing. And Pauline made the great point. Out of a pint of beer, she's paying for security, she's paying to keep her building open, she's paying a London living wage to her staff. There are so many more costs that come out of a pint of beer than just kind of, her salary or the salary for her staff. And the kind of the impacts that the careless raising of VAT done by this government has, I think, is kind of untold. And I'm so glad Pauline got the chance to tell us, what the day-to-day reality of running a pub is like.
So right.
So right, so left. Well, that is all we've got time for today, but we'll be back next week when we'll be tackling another problem plaguing millions of people in Britain.
Do join us then, but in the meantime, listen, subscribe, and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Goodbye.